On February 9th of 2004, 21-year-old UMass student Maura Murray drove from her dorm in Amherst, Massachusetts to the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
At approximately 7:27 p.m., Maura spun out her 1996 Saturn on a hairpin turn on Route 112 in North Haverhill. There has never been a credible sighting of Maura since.
Maura is 5 foot 7 inches tall. She weighs 120 pounds, and she has brown hair and hazel eyes.
If you have any information regarding Maura's disappearance, please submit it to us,
The Murray family at MauraMurrayFamilyDirect@gmail.com.
or the New Hampshire State Police Cold Case Unit.
This is Missing Maura Murray. Welcome back to Missing Maura Murray. I'm Tim, here today with Lance. How's it going, Lance?
Oh, it's going very well. Couldn't be better, actually. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing great, Lance. This episode, as you know, is part of Private Investigations for the Missing, which is a nonprofit that we are on the board of. Check it out at investigationsforthemissing.org. And this is the second case that Private Investigations for the Missing has taken on.
Now, this case is being worked on by our good friend and former police chief, Lou Barry, and it is a case that is dated back to November of 2001, and it is the unsolved murder of Dean Webster.
That's right. Dean Webster was a 28-year-old male, and he was found deceased outside of his residence. This unsolved murder took place in Rochester, Vermont. There was evidence at the scene as well as results from an autopsy that confirm Mr. Webster was the victim of a homicide. But it is unsolved. And so, Lance, this is an unsolved homicide, which is not a missing persons case.
Right, but it does represent the template in which Private Investigations for the Missing wants to approach cases. The cases come to us, we vet them, and our investigators who are working with us, like Greg Overacker or Lou Barry, they will decide which ones they think could be solvable and something that they can put this template to and show that it works as a system for bringing resolution to something. We're almost there with the Erica Franelich case, and in this interview, Lou even says this is a very solvable case. So we might as well take that format that we're trying to showcase and we're trying to raise money for and apply it to this.
So this is the first step in the investigation, actually. We connected with the Webster family a little bit, not us, but Lou. And so, again, this is part of that first step, is doing a podcast and putting out some information. So if you know any information in this case, it is very important to turn that tip over. You can email Private Investigations for the Missing at investigationsforthemissing@gmail.com. There's also a Dean Webster specific page and Facebook page now as well, Who Killed Dean Webster. But you can also submit a tip to the Vermont State Police by texting keyword V, as in Vermont, tips to 274637.
And you did say that this is the first step in the process, and I think that is a very unique position for all of us to be in and really to witness how it all starts. You'll hear Lou literally say, I don't know about this, and I don't know about this. I know about this and this. So you get to experience the investigative technique and the investigative process that he's going through. We're going to have him back on again. We'll hopefully have family members on and maybe some reporters who reported on it, and you get to see it right from the beginning, and you get to hear it from a media standpoint, an investigator standpoint, a family standpoint, and hopefully by the time we're done, we'll have some conclusion here and some resolution to this unsolved murder.
That would be great. And so, yeah, it's a really unique experience. You get to see the investigation right from the beginning, from where they're taking over. And it's not really going to sound like a normal podcast episode where you hear the whole story, because there's not much there. What we just talked about was basically the starting point, and Lou took over from there. And these episodes are going to be aired on both of our channels, that being Missing Maura Murray and Crawl Space, because we want to spread the awareness for this case as far and wide as possible. And this will not replace this week's Missing Maura Murray episode. Actually, we're going to do a new episode with Laura Rist regarding the disappearance of Trenny Gibson, and that is coming on Friday, June 26th.
Laura once again brings to the table more details of Trenny Gibson's disappearance. She is one of the most thorough citizen detectives we've ever worked with. I can't speak highly enough about her.
Okay, everybody, thanks a lot. Make sure to follow Private Investigations for the Missing social pages. And don't forget the Dean Webster, Who Killed Dean Webster Facebook group.
And check out all of our shows at crawlspace-media.com.
We are being joined now by private investigator Lou Barry. Lou, how's it going today?
Wonderful. How about yourself?
Doing great.
We're doing just great. Thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your extremely busy day that you always seem to have busy days. Every time we talk to you, you're always looking into something. You have some case going on. You're like this behind the scenes, like guy behind the curtain, like the man behind the man.
Yeah, so sometimes it seems that way, I guess.
Well, you are a former police chief. Can you give a quick bit of background for anyone who doesn't know you? We're familiar with you because of Breonna Maitland's case and Private Investigations for the Missing and Bruce's connection with you. Can you give a little background for anyone who's hearing your voice for the first time?
Sure. I spent about 11 years down on the Cape with the police department down there. I started as a patrolman and then became a detective. And then ultimately a sergeant, and then moved up to the western part of the state, became a police chief. I stayed as chief for 24 years, retired. I started teaching in college classes back in 1990 as an adjunct, and I'm still teaching in a couple different places, teach a lot at the police academy. After I retired, I got involved in private investigating, kind of almost accidentally. A good friend of mine had filed a civil suit and needed an investigator, so I helped her out. That was a sexual assault case, and did the investigation for her, located some witnesses, etc. And she got a pretty good settlement in federal court out of it. After that, I did a couple more cases like that for different individuals, and then had a kind of a lull period. I was familiar with Breonna Maitland's case, so at the time I was working with a young lady, and we met with Bruce and started looking at that case, and got involved in cold cases that way. So since Bruce started the nonprofit, Private Investigators for the Missing, I've been, trying to help out as best I can with that type of case. I worked with Greg on the Franovich case, I think you've done a show on, and I've helped out a kid out in Texas on Brandon Lawson's case. And this case here came to my attention via a journalist who had done quite a bit of very thorough research on the case and reached a dead end, and reached out to see if perhaps PI for the Missing could help out.
Okay. And now this case is a little bit different, though, because Private Investigations for the Missing primarily deals with missing persons cases, and this isn't exactly that, is it?
No, it isn't. And it is a little bit of a reach relative to what PI for the Missing was founded for. However, in a way it isn't. I mean, I think certainly in the case of like Breonna and many of the other cases, the fact that a person is missing, realistically, you kind of figure that they're deceased. In this case, we just know that at the beginning. That's all. Other than that, it's very similar in that there's not a lot to go on. It's been investigated thoroughly, and there's no hard evidence at this point.
Well, before we get into the details of this case, I just want to talk a little bit further about Private Investigations for the Missing, focusing on missing people, and you gave a great answer. This isn't so much a missing person, it's an unsolved murder. It's still the same template that we're always striving for. We see a really good example of that with Erica Franilich's case and the work that you and Greg have done with that. So I feel like there's a template that is always being fine-tuned, especially in the early days of this nonprofit. And this case here, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this is a really good application of that template.
Yeah, I think so. And, the main premise is trying to help families get answers. And by providing them with a resource, specifically a private investigator, that they just can't themselves afford to do. So, in that sense, there is really no difference in the cases. This particular case is almost 20 years old, and there's been, as far as we know, publicly, no progress on it.
Okay, and we are talking about the murder of Dean Webster in November of 2001. Do you want to go into it chronologically, how it happened, or do you want to talk about what type of person Dean was?
Well, actually, maybe a little bit of both. Dean grew up in that area, in Rochester area. And Rochester is a small rural village, your typical, I think, Vermont. What you picture, if you picture a Vermont town, it's kind of tucked away in the Green Mountains, and at one time was known for mills and things, and now it's kind of an artsy community, from what I gather, near the ski areas. Farming certainly played a big role in the history of the town. I think now there's about 1,100 people. Not sure how many were there back in 2001. But it's kind of a quaint little village. There's no established police department that's covered by the state police. And so it's, kind of a charming little town. And Dean, like I said, grew up in the area. He hunted, he fished, he was an outdoorsman. From what I'm told, very well liked, easygoing, easy to get along with. And he'd been working for some type of, I think, a plumbing supply company or something, doing installations, and he had been injured a few months prior, hurt his shoulder, was out on workman's comp, and he was building a house. So he took that time as an opportunity to kind of get some work done in his house. And that, was where he was at early November of 01.
And so what ended up happening?
Well, it's there's a lot of unknowns still, a lot of questions, I think, but so I can run you through the scenario as I know it at this point. There had been some type of an event the week before, and he had loaned an article of clothing to some young ladies. It was cold, I guess, and loaned them a sweater or something. And a couple of the girls tried to return it. This was on I believe, either the 15th or the 16th. The dates are a little unclear. And they got to his house, which is on a road called Sky Hollow Road, which, if you look on a map, is extremely rural. Maybe 4 or 5 houses scattered on the length of the road, not really that close to each other at all. And he was building his house there. So they went to the house to return the item, and lights were on. Dean had 2 dogs. One was a Rottweiler who was very aggressive, I guess, that was chained up. And the second was a boxer who was running loose. And the boxer was very aggressive. In other words, the girls were afraid to get out of the car because of the way the dog was acting and because he was loose. Lights were on in the house. Door was open. No sign of Dean. So they left. And this is where it gets a little confusing date-wise. Apparently the next day, which is the 16th, they returned again, although there's some indication that perhaps the first day they went was on the 16th and the second day was the 17th. It's really confusing. But they went back the second time later in the afternoon. I think it was getting dark out, or was dark out. And again, same scenario. This time the dog was so aggressive it was biting the tires of the car.
Huh.
So they left and they telephoned a close friend of Dean's, to the name of Gibbs. And he met the girls, went to the house, and he found Dean on the side of the house, which was, from the driveway, you wouldn't be able to see that. And he was obviously deceased. They called the state police, and they responded. This was about 6:20 p.m. On November 17th, 2001.
So he might have been dead for up to 3 days at that point, or 2 days?
I would say the earliest could have been the 15th. I believe they had him seen on the afternoon of the 16th, but that doesn't necessarily add up with what the girls had seen. So that, without having done any investigation on this at all yet, it's kind of still up in the air as to, when exactly he had been shot.
He was shot then?
Yeah, he was shot to death. Again, we don't have the autopsy report as of this writing. But so where the wounds were, how many, what caliber, all that is still kind of a unknown. Information has not been released by the state police. So that's one of the things that we're hoping to learn, when and if the autopsy report comes out.
Great. What was done in the immediate investigation?
Well, again, the state, for obvious reasons, has not released a lot of information. I know a number of his friends were talked to, and I'm sure the routine was followed, but we don't at this point have any record of that from what they've done, and I don't anticipate getting that, obviously, from them. So we're going to have to kind of start at the beginning and work through it.
Now, you just said for obvious reasons they haven't released that information. What are the obvious reasons? Because it's still an open investigation, and does the fact that it's from 2001 do they look at, is there like a time frame where they would probably start to release this information? And are we reaching that?
If there's, basic protocol would probably be not to release information because it's still considered an active investigation. They still have a detective from the Major Crime Squad who's assigned to it, and he's still working it. I've spoken to him, and they are not in the habit of releasing investigative details prior to certainly an arrest being made. That does make it difficult for private investigators to come in because you don't know what's been done, who's been talked to, who hasn't, who's been cleared, who the suspect is. You kind of have to develop that yourself. Sometimes that's a good thing because you follow leads that perhaps they didn't or gave up on or cleared, and you maybe come up with some different information or whatever. So it's not always a negative to start from scratch.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. I always just imagine someone like yourself. How long were you in law enforcement?
35 years, and then I retired, and then twice I've been back as interim chief for college department. So off and on, over 35 years.
I always imagine somebody like you, over 35 years in law enforcement, you could just walk into the major crime unit and be like, "Hey, I'm Lou. Give me what you got."
Unfortunately, you're either in or you're out. And when you're out, you're out. I will say this: Vermont, with Brianna's case in particular, have been extremely cooperative with the private, with us. Okay, and so and I'm sure that plays a role in it. But the investigators may want to do one thing, and maybe the department policy is something different, so that they can't be violating department policy no matter what they perhaps would like to do. I think that can be frustrating, for a private investigator. It can be frustrating for them too.
So this is considered a solvable case, I take it.
That's one of the attractive things about it. I think, it's solvable. We're looking at, again, a town of 1,100 people. His circle of associates was not huge, and it's not like a city where you could have a random killer that had no association with him. So you'd have to be lost to find his house if you didn't know it was there. And so the chances of an outsider doing it are almost negligible, which narrows it down considerably, I would imagine. Again, I haven't really investigated it, but and while I think of it, that's just something I like to point out. It's unusual in these cases for us to be doing this at the start of the investigation, not after it's been investigated. And I think we talked about that. It's one of the things about this particular podcast is we haven't really done a lot of work on it. Haven't done any work on it yet. So we're kind of bringing in the public at the start rather than the middle or the end.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at with the whole template idea of private investigations for the missing. A case comes to us, and then we use this platform to get the word out there. And this is a really unique situation. This is almost a perfect storm of situation. You have a case where it's not so old, where you have to worry about interviewing people that might not be with us anymore, for example. And you get the opportunity to start from scratch and solicit the public's information and any public knowledge that's out there. I think that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and the chances of the case not having someone out there who knows what happened are slim, I think someone knows, I guess a better way to put it. I think the information is out there, and they're either reluctant to come forward for one of a number of reasons, perhaps, safety, perhaps, their involvement in the crime, perhaps their relationship with the person who may have committed it, whatever. But as I think we've discussed before, one advantage, if there is any, of doing a cold case is things change in 20 years. Allegiances change. People find religion. People have a different perspective on things. They maybe change their lifestyle where they're no longer involved in certain criminal activity or whatever. So in that sense, sometimes your time is an ally instead of an enemy.
Right.
So what are the first steps then in investigating the case?
Do a podcast. This
Perfect.
is it. It's getting the information out there, and we put up a Facebook page. We posted it at a couple sites. Certainly, this podcast was one of the first things I wanted to get done so that we could get the word out there that, hey, we're active, we're looking at this. We're not the police. If you have information, you come to us. If you have, a reluctance to speak to the authority, which many people do, understandably, talk to us. And, let's hope that the publicity generally will stimulate conversation, and that conversation can very well stimulate a lead. I'd like to do at some point a call-in campaign like we did initially in Brianna's case, and that generated about 20 leads. None of them materialized, but again, the publicity was great for the case. It generated interest, and since that time we have gotten leads that may very well lead to something. So it's all kind of a domino effect, I think.
Any family members, any friends that you can speak to in regards to Dean Webster?
Yeah, he actually had a number of brothers and sisters. I've only spoken with one, and that's the one that actually, I've spoken to his father also, but his sister Sandy is my main contact, and she's kind of like, I guess I'd call her the client. She's the one that we're going to clear things with, and we're going to answer to, and everything. And she's been extremely cooperative. She sent a number of photographs, which I think I may have forwarded to you, of him growing up, fishing, hunting, whatever. And you kind of get an idea of his personality just by looking at the pictures. Always smiling, enjoying what he's doing, etc. So she's been my main contact. He does have other sisters that I've reached out to and am either haven't yet made contact with or have made contact and haven't had an opportunity to speak to him yet. I did speak to his father, a very, very nice man. I feel so bad for him. I think he's 80, 81. And, as often with parents, you lose a child before, you don't want your children to die before you do. When you lose one under circumstances like this and don't have any answers, it's something that you carry with you. And, I'd really like to have him be able to clear that before he passes, if at all possible.
Any wife or any girlfriend involved?
Nothing. He definitely wasn't married. There's been talk of a girls that he's dated, but no one. I don't think he had any serious relationship at the time or any fiance at the time. At least, again, I'm in the baby step stages of the investigation, so a lot of these things I don't know yet, honestly, because I haven't done anything on the case. It was just not only until last week that we got the paperwork signed and really got to go ahead to go for it. So I haven't really done anything on it yet. I wanted to get this podcast done, get the Facebook page running before we did too much.
Great. And is a freedom of information request one of the first things that you're going to do?
Probably not. um, one of the valid reasons for not replying to a FOIA is the fact that it's an active criminal investigation. So I don't know, what I would ask for that is not going to get that response. And so at this point, I have no intentions of it. I have made arrangements for the autopsy, not through a FOIA, but the family's entitled to a copy. They've never gotten one. So that's one thing. His father rather, is taking care of for me. He's requested it. So that'll be the first step. But I've promised not only he, but the state police that would be confidential.
Is that something that's uncommon, or is that pretty common to not have the family members have access to the autopsy report?
Well, the family members are entitled to it, but that's it. It's not public info. And in many times, there's a good reason why. When you're conducting an investigation, particularly a homicide investigation, one thing you have to be cognizant of is the fact that people falsely confess sometimes. Or that if you do have the perpetrator and he has confessed, you want to verify that is in fact him, because an uncorroborated confession is not enough to convict someone. So by withholding information relative to the scene, relative to perhaps the autopsy or the condition, or perhaps the weapon used, or any type of information that only the person who committed the crime would know, is common. And that way you can weed out false confessions or verify a true confession.
And I know you said that there was no information, or you haven't found the information on what caliber the bullets were, but do you know how many times he was shot?
Not for certain, no. Not sure how I know this or where I heard this. It could have been a rumor that just someone perpetuated. It was 3 times. We shot 3 times, but I don't want to say that for sure, because I don't know that that's a fact. That's just what was said.
I see here in an article from WCAX.com, it says that the deadly weapon used was not a hunting weapon, and there were multiple shots, and the killer was close, under 50 feet away, and Dean was facing these shots, I believe, as well.
Yeah, that's what the news report says. I mean, that may very well be the case, but multiple. What's multiple? It's more than one, right?
Yep.
So, other than the fact that he was shot multiple times, I don't know that tells you a heck of a lot.
From that same article, it's interesting that they mention Vermont's rifle season had just rifle hunting season had just begun, right? But this wasn't an accident, because this was not a hunting.
Yeah, that's what they say, and I don't know. So that doesn't tell me much. Without knowing the caliber, but normally speaking, a hunting accident doesn't involve 3 shots either, or multiple shots, not from close up.
Right.
So but I think that's probably, looking back at the time, that was probably speculation. Well, it was deer season. He's up in the woods, there's a lot of deer. Maybe somebody shot him accidentally. So they probably want to put that to bed right away. But it's important to note that it was deer season, so that shots heard by anyone would be disregarded.
Right.
You wouldn't pay any attention at all to in that area to gunshots in that wooded area like that.
You also said that you spoke to his father, who's a really nice guy, and you want to try to get some closure for him. I mean, it's not really closure. It's just sort of an answer for him, because there's no way you're bringing his son back. But how do you even introduce that conversation to somebody when you call them? How do you introduce yourself, and how do you open up that topic for them? It's going to be painful, right?
Yes, and it's a difficult call. As a longtime law enforcement officer, the worst call All you have to do is the one at 2 o'clock in the morning to knock on someone's door and tell them that their son or daughter is not coming home anymore. And this, isn't quite as bad as that, but it's always a difficult topic, I guess, because you never know how the person is going to react. In this case, I called him, I told him who I was, and I knew from talking to his daughter that he was very interested in finding out who did it to his son. So I knew that would be make for a positive introduction, anyways, as opposed to someone who maybe just wanted to put it behind them and not think of it. And there are people like that who their way of dealing with things are to either pretend they didn't happen or try and forget that they happened.
Sure.
But I knew going in that he was receptive to the investigation. So once I explained to him who I was and everything, and I think the biggest problem people have is, and I can understand this. You call up and you say, "Hey, I'm so and so, and we're going to do this for nothing." Their immediate reaction is, "Yeah, right." What kind of scam is this? If that makes any sense. So it sometimes takes convincing that, hey, this is the real deal. We're not looking for anything. We're not looking for any money. We're not looking for any recognition. All we want to do is try and help. And that's the mission of the nonprofit, and that's what we're here for. And we obviously aren't guaranteeing anything because realistically, the chances of solving cold cases is not real high. But if you don't try, they're non-existent.
And do the Websters believe they know who did it?
Sandy's the only one I've really had conversation with, and I don't believe she does. I don't believe she has any firm opinions. Now, we haven't really spoken. It's very difficult trying to interview somebody under these conditions on the telephone. Normal conditions, I'd drive up there and sit down, and we'd have a coffee, and we'd talk for an hour and a half. But with this whole situation the way it is with the COVID and everything, everything has to be done either online or on the phone, which makes it a little more difficult. So I'll talk to her again. In fact, I've invited her to join us, if that's okay with you guys, next podcast.
Of course.
On the case. And she said she'd be happy to do that if it would help. So, maybe by that time we can have a conversation and you can ask her that question yourself.
Okay, great. And do you know if there's any piece of evidence or something like that investigators are looking for, like something specific? Like I know in Maura Murray's case, we say, her keys and her wallet have never been found. So obviously if you come across that, make a call. Is there anything like that we know of, just the murder weapon?
Well, certainly the weapon, if they have, and again, I don't know what they have because I have not seen their report. They haven't discussed it with me. Are there shell casings? I don't know. Have they recovered the bullet? I don't know. Without the shell casings or the bullet, even the firearm is going to be a big help. But assumably they've recovered some of that evidence. Do they have tire tracks? I don't know. Was anything missing? Was his wallet there? I'm not sure. Until we get the answers to some of those questions, I don't know what evidence they'd be looking for, other than, of course, A, a witness who may or may not exist, or B, the firearm. But there could be foot impressions. There could be tire impressions. Of course, 20 years later, the value of a tire impression or foot impression is probably not very good. So I can't answer that because I don't know. I don't have that knowledge.
Is there anything to the report? You had sent us a document with your notes, and you said there was an unconfirmed report that he may have had a grow operation in his house and he was selling marijuana.
That's been mentioned. I haven't verified that, but that was mentioned. It certainly might lead to a motive. I mean, if looking at what he says or what his friends say or his family says about his personality, doesn't sound like he had any enemies. It doesn't sound like there was any romantic involvement with anyone that would lead to this, a jealousy or anything like that. So I don't believe he had any disputes with anyone, including neighbors. So you try and rule out the motives, and if in fact he was involved in some type of narcotic activity, that certainly could be a motive, that he was the subject of a drug rip or a disagreement over a drug sale or something along those lines. So that's a possibility. But again, I haven't truly verified that that's the case.
There's also the well driller who he paid $1,000 to drill a well on his property as well. And that was right around the same time. And I know you're still in the very early stages, but has anyone mentioned anything about this well driller maybe going back for more money?
No, I don't believe that would even be a possibility. He was drilling a neighbor's well, and Dean needed a well drilled and went down and they made a deal. He paid him $1,000 cash. Now, to me, that's of interest because not many people walk around with $1,000 in their pocket, especially in their circumstances where he's out of workman's comp and everything. Which kind of lends credence to perhaps the narcotic angle. I don't think the well driller, from what I understand, would be anywhere near a suspect or anything like that. They had settled the price, and that was the end of that. So.
Do you have a specific address for him on Sky Hollow Road? I think it'd be interesting to check that out on like Google Earth or something.
I know which house it is. I in the interest of privacy, because his family members live there now, I'd rather not publicize.
You don't want to put an address out there to the public for anyone to just go and visit?
No, we don't want to wind up like the poor people that live near Mara Murray's tree. There's only like 6-7 houses on the whole location. So, but I don't even know if they have house numbers, to be honest with you.
Right.
It's pretty rural.
So what is next then after the podcast? You're going to dig in? Yeah,
I think we're going to start talking. I want to talk to a couple of the family members, get a little more background on Dean. I have, like I said, the person who brought this to my attention did a lot of work on it and did a pretty good job, and then kind of got to a stone wall. But there's a number of people that have not been talked to that should be talked to. So I'll probably try and start that. But usually in these cases, I like to do is learn as much about the case as I can before I start going and talking to people, because you want to know what you're talking about, I guess. And I'm getting to the stage now where I'm feeling comfortable with the sequence of events and who is who, but there are definitely some individuals that I'd like to interview. Some have been interviewed already by the VSP, and some may not have been. I don't know.
And where is the VSP at right now? You said that they had an investigator assigned to it?
Yes, they do. One of the major crime unit sergeants is assigned to the case, and he's he's done work on it. It's obviously not. I wouldn't say a priority, because other cases take precedence. Fresh cases have to be worked while they're fresh. So I think he does this when he can, and I think he's done a good job on it, from what I understand. I don't know the particulars, but I do know it's active. And one of the reasons I know that is because even before I even heard about this case, we were at another meeting on Brianna's case, and this case came up in general, and there was just some conversation between two of them about the fact that they were still actively involved in the case. This is before I had even heard of it. So I know they are actively still interested in this. Again, how much time they're able to afford to devote to it. They have a big caseload, and there's not a lot of them, and they have a lot of other priorities, I guess. And to spend time on a 20-year-old case when you have new stuff coming in, it doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to put out there?
Just the obvious. If anybody's got any information, we'd love to hear it. Again, there's an email account we've set up just for this. It's whokilleddean@gmail.com. There's a Facebook page out there. The family has one, and we have one set up also. If anybody has any information, we'd love to hear it, no matter how trivial or perhaps even if they've told someone it before. We've run into that before in other cases where information slipped through the cracks. So it sometimes doesn't hurt to have a fresh set of eyes look at it.
Great.
Would you recommend anybody reaching out to investigationsforthemissing.org to submit a tip?
They certainly could, because they channel that to whoever is investigating the crime. So they could just do it there. They could do it through the Who Killed Dean Gmail account, or the Vermont State Police have a tip line. And certainly, if they feel comfortable talking to the state police, then that's good too. The key here is solving the case, not who solves the case.